Authorities say Robinson refused to answer questions once in custody. But online, investigators uncovered a startling clue. In a private Discord chat, Robinson appeared to admit responsibility. He wrote, "It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." Hours later, he turned himself in. Now he is about to face his first court appearance. Prosecutors are expected to bring the most serious charges: aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and the unlawful discharge of a firearm. This moment could set the stage for a long legal battle. But as the courtroom prepares, the country is already divided. Some see the killing as part of a rising tide of political violence. Others say too many questions remain unanswered. Was this a personal act of violence, or something bigger? Today all eyes are on Provo, Utah, where Tyler Robinson will appear before a judge. What happens next could shape not only his future, but the national conversation about justice, politics, and violence in America. As the courthouse in Provo prepares for the hearing, reporters gather outside. Cameras are positioned, microphones lined up, and the crowd waits. Inside, a judge will appear in person, but Tyler Robinson will appear virtually, connected by a secure WebEx link. It is his first chance to hear the charges against him, charges that could carry life in prison, or even the possibility of the death penalty, if prosecutors decide to pursue it. The courtroom is quiet, but tension hangs in the air. Every word matters. The judge will ensure that Robinson understands the accusations, that he knows his rights, and that he is represented by counsel. If he cannot afford a private attorney, a public defender will be appointed. This is routine procedure, but in a case like this, every routine moment feels extraordinary. Outside, the world continues to debate the meaning of this crime. For many, the shooting of Charlie Kirk was not just a murder. It was an attack that symbolized something larger, an assault on politics, on free speech, on the deep divisions running through America today. For others, the rush to connect Robinson's actions to ideology feels premature. Investigators, after all, have not yet confirmed a motive. Still, Robinson's online confession echoes in the background. In a private Discord chat of about 30 people, he wrote, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." Hours later, he surrendered to police, telling his online friends, "Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing." That message, casual in tone yet chilling in meaning, is now part of the evidence. But investigators face a problem. Since his arrest, Robinson has refused to cooperate. He has not spoken to detectives, and he has offered no explanation. Without his words, prosecutors must build their case through eyewitness testimony, digital evidence, and forensic detail. They must prove not only that he fired the fatal shot, but also that it was intentional, premeditated, and beyond reasonable doubt. As this hearing begins, another storyline unfolds outside the courthouse. Political figures seize the moment. Vice President J.D. Vance, close to Charlie Kirk both personally and politically, hosts a special broadcast of the Charlie Kirk Show from his office. He calls the killing an act of left-wing extremism, part of what he describes as a dangerous movement spreading across the country. "We have to make sure that the killer is brought to justice," he declares. "And importantly, we have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years." His words spark debate, as some argue that blaming a political ideology without confirmed evidence only deepens the divide. Inside the White House, staff remember Kirk's influence. Officials speak openly about his role in shaping strategy, rallying young voters, and strengthening the campaign that helped return President Trump to power. In the briefing room, colleagues reflect on his energy, his drive, and the space he leaves behind. For them, this is more than a news story. It is personal loss. Yet outside the political halls, ordinary Americans ask different questions. How did Robinson get into the event with a weapon? Were there security failures? And could this tragedy have been prevented? Investigators face pressure not only to convict Robinson, but to explain how such an act unfolded in a public setting, in front of hundreds of people. The courtroom prepares for the roll call. The judge enters, and the proceeding begins. Robinson's image flickers on the screen, appearing from a remote holding cell. He is silent. His face is calm, but unreadable. This moment is not about testimony. It is about procedure. Yet the weight of the charges makes the silence feel louder. As the charges are read, aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, felony discharge of a firearm, the gravity becomes clear. Each count is explained carefully. Each carries years, even decades, of prison time. Robinson listens. He does not speak. The judge asks if he understands. He nods. The hearing continues. And beyond the courtroom walls, the story continues to ripple outward. Commentators on television debate whether this was an act of personal rage or political terrorism. Families of students at Utah Valley University struggle with fear, remembering how quickly a night of speeches became a night of violence. And across the nation, Americans argue about what this means for free speech, political discourse, and the safety of public gatherings. This is only the beginning. The court has not yet set bail. Prosecutors have not yet announced whether they will seek the maximum penalty. Robinson has not yet entered a plea, but already, the case has become a symbol. For some, it is a warning of how far political division can go. For others, it is proof that America is rushing to politicize tragedy. And as the cameras continue to roll outside the courthouse, one fact remains clear. What happens next will decide not only the fate of Tyler Robinson, but the legacy of Charlie Kirk, and perhaps even the future of political speech in America. The first court appearance is not a trial. It is a beginning, a moment of procedure. Yet in high-profile cases, beginnings carry extraordinary weight. For Charlie Kirk's family, for his supporters, and for millions watching across the country, this hearing is the first glimpse of justice in motion. But justice in America is never simple. In the days after the shooting, investigators revealed little. They confirmed Robinson's arrest. They confirmed the online messages. But when it came to motive, they stayed silent. Reporters pressed officials for answers. Was this politically driven? Was it personal? Or was it the act of a lone individual, untethered from movements or ideology? The questions were sharp, but the answers never came. That silence created a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushed speculation. Commentators framed their own narratives. On talk radio, some declared Robinson a radical. On cable news, others warned against assumptions, reminding viewers that the legal system requires evidence, not guesses. On social media, the conversation spun wildly, with theories ranging from organized plots to personal grudges. The truth, however, remained locked away in case files that investigators were unwilling to release. Meanwhile, at Utah Valley University, the community struggled to recover. Students who were in the auditorium that night recounted the sound of gunfire, the rush of panic, the scramble for safety. Some described diving to the floor. Others remembered the chaos at the exits, the fear that more shots might follow. Counselors were brought to campus. Vigils were held. Flowers and candles covered the steps of the building where Kirk had been speaking. For many young people, it was the first time violence had struck so close. Back in Washington, Vice President J.D. Vance kept Charlie Kirk's name in the national spotlight. Hosting the Charlie Kirk Show from his official office, he paid tribute to his friend and political ally. He praised Kirk's work in mobilizing voters, in shaping policy debates, in giving voice to young conservatives. But he did more than mourn. He pointed a finger. He said Kirk's death was not random. He called it the result of left-wing extremism, a movement he argued had grown unchecked. His words were strong, but his evidence was thin. Investigators had not confirmed a motive. Yet the message was clear. In his view, the crime was political. Those remarks stirred anger and applause in equal measure. Supporters echoed his claims. Critics accused him of exploiting tragedy for political gain. And through it all, prosecutors in Utah said little. Their job was not to argue politics. Their job was to build a case. As Robinson sat in custody, refusing to speak, detectives worked through the evidence. They gathered the Discord messages. They examined his digital footprint. They traced his steps on the day of the shooting, piecing together how he arrived, how he moved through the campus, and how he left. They interviewed witnesses. They studied ballistics. Each detail became part of a larger puzzle. A puzzle they would have to present in court. For Robinson, the silence was strategic. Anything he said could be used against him. By staying quiet, he forced prosecutors to do the heavy lifting. By the time of his first hearing, the weight of that silence was clear. He had offered no defense, but he had also offered no confession beyond the online posts. The Discord messages were damning, but defense attorneys could challenge their context. Were they authentic? Were they written under duress? Could someone else have typed them? These were questions the courtroom would eventually have to confront. The hearing continued with formality. The judge confirmed Robinson's rights. He confirmed the seriousness of the charges. He explained the penalties that could follow a conviction. Robinson nodded again. Still, he did not speak. Outside, reporters filed updates by the minute. Headlines flashed across screens. Robinson appears in court. Kirk's suspected killer silent at hearing. Prosecutors prepare for long battle. For the public, these were new developments. For the families involved, it was a reminder that the path to justice would be long, exhausting, and uncertain. And as the first appearance closed, the questions only grew louder. Would Robinson plead guilty, sparing the nation a lengthy trial? Or would he fight the charges, forcing witnesses to relive the night of the shooting in a courtroom packed with cameras? For now, the answer was unclear. But one thing was certain. This case had moved from tragedy to trial, and the nation was watching. The first court appearance ended quickly, but the story was far from over. Robinson's silence left a void, and into that void stepped prosecutors, reporters, and politicians. Each had their own role to play, their own angle to push, their own story to tell. For investigators, the case was now about assembling facts. The Discord messages were one piece. The weapon itself was another. Ballistic tests linked the firearm to the fatal shot that killed Charlie Kirk. Witnesses identified Robinson as the man holding it. Video from the university's security system showed his movements on campus. Piece by piece, the evidence stacked up. But for a charge as serious as aggravated murder, the standard was high. Prosecutors would need to prove Not only that Robinson fired the weapon, but that he did so with intent, with planning, with no justification that the law could accept. For the media, the story took on a life of its own. Every day brought new headlines. Some outlets focused on the crime, the courtroom, and the investigation. Others turned their cameras on Washington, where leaders debated what the killing meant for the nation. The narrative split in two directions. In Utah, a criminal case was unfolding. In Washington, a political firestorm was raging. Charlie Kirk's supporters described him as more than an activist. They called him a movement, a voice for conservative youth, a strategist who shaped national campaigns. His absence was felt not just in headlines, but in strategy sessions, rallies, and broadcasts. For Turning Point USA, the organization he founded, the question was how to move forward without its leader. For his opponents, the conversation was different. Some condemned the violence but pointed out that political tension cuts in both directions, that attacks have also targeted Democrats, and that no one side owns the monopoly on political violence. Back in Utah, the courtroom prepared for the next steps. Robinson's arraignment would determine his formal plea. Guilty, not guilty, or no contest. The outcome of that moment would set the tone for everything that followed. If he admitted guilt, the case could move swiftly toward sentencing. If he fought the charges, a trial would follow, stretching the story across months or even years. Prosecutors knew the world was watching. The decision on bail would be critical. Was Robinson too dangerous to be released? Too great a risk to flee? Judges weigh these questions carefully, but in a case involving a high-profile assassination, the pressure is immense. Every ruling is scrutinized. Every decision is second-guessed. Meanwhile, the public sought answers. Parents asked if events like the one at Utah Valley University were safe. Students wanted to know how a young man could enter an auditorium with a gun. Lawmakers debated security protocols. Some pushed for more restrictions on campus events. Others warned against limiting free speech. The tragedy had opened a wider debate, one that reached beyond Utah, beyond Charlie Kirk, beyond even politics itself. And through it all, Robinson remained silent. No interviews. No statements. No words beyond the ones typed into Discord before his surrender. It was a silence that frustrated some, but it was also a strategy. Defense attorneys often advise clients to say nothing, to let the state carry the burden of proof. In court, silence can be powerful. But in the court of public opinion, silence leaves a void that others rush to fill. In Washington, the void was filled quickly. Vice President Vance repeated his claim that the murder was fueled by extremism. He pointed to years of escalating tension, years of online rhetoric, years of division. He said the assassination was a symptom of something larger, something dangerous. Others pushed back. They said it was reckless to blame ideology before investigators released their findings. They said tragedy should not become political weapons. Yet the debate raged on, louder each day, with Charlie Kirk's name at the center. At Utah Valley University, vigils continued. Candles flickered. Students prayed. Professors gave statements about free expression and the importance of open dialogue. But beneath the words was a sense of unease. Violence had entered their campus. It had taken a life in front of them, and it had changed the way they saw public gatherings forever. The next court date was set. Reporters circled it on their calendars. Families prepared themselves. Prosecutors readied their arguments. And Robinson waited in custody, his future uncertain. Each passing day brought new questions. Each new development brought new headlines. And the story moved forward, one step at a time, toward a trial that promised to be as public as it was painful. Inside the Utah courtroom, all eyes were on Tyler Robinson. The man accused of killing Charlie Kirk sat in silence. No apology. No explanation. Not a single word. Prosecutors laid out the first pieces of evidence. The Discord confession, the recovered weapon, the video footage tracking his steps on campus. Every detail built a case too strong to ignore. But Robinson gave nothing back. His silence was his shield. And in that silence, the questions only grew louder. Why did he do it? Was it planned? And what message did he mean to send? Beyond the courtroom, the country was already divided. Supporters called it an act of political violence. Critics warned against turning tragedy into a weapon of rhetoric. Vigils burned on campus, while in Washington, leaders argued over what the killing meant for America's future. One man's silence had become a nation's debate. And as the trial moves forward, the stakes could not be higher. The verdict will decide Robinson's fate, but the impact of this crime is already shaping the national conversation on justice, politics, and violence. The court will deliver a sentence, but the country is still waiting for answers. Follow for more true crime stories told raw, clear, and unfiltered. Don't scroll past. This is where real stories live.